The marble staircase seemed to stretch forever as Grace Sullivan felt the hands on her back, pushing hard. Time slowed. She could hear Ethan's scream cutting through the chaos. See the horror in Diana's eyes from the hallway below. Feel the cold shock of inevitability as gravity took hold. In that split second before the fall, one thought flashed through her mind. They had no idea who they were messing with. But what happened next would shock everyone at Westfield Heights Academy. If you've ever witnessed bullying or stood up for someone who needed help, you'll understand why this story matters. Feel free to share your own experience in the comments below. Sometimes knowing we're not alone makes all the difference. And if these stories inspire you, that little thanks button helps me keep sharing them with people who need to hear them most. Now, let me tell you about the teacher who changed everything. 6 weeks earlier, Grace Sullivan walked through the pristine glass doors of Westfield Heights for the first time. Her floral sundress swaying gently in the September breeze. At 26, she looked more like a college student than a teacher, with her warm hazel eyes and genuine smile that reached all the way to those eyes. She clutched her leather satchel containing carefully prepared lesson plans, her hands only slightly trembling with first-day nerves. "You must be Grace." Diana Peterson appeared like a guardian angel, her silver hair pulled back in an elegant bun. The veteran English teacher had the kind of presence that commanded respect without demanding it. "Welcome to Westfield Heights. Come on, I'll show you to your classroom." As they walked through the spotless hallways, Diana's voice dropped to a confidential tone. "Listen, I've been here 15 years, so let me give you the real orientation. The kids here are mostly great, bright, engaged, from good families. But there's one group you need to watch out for." Grace's eyebrows raised slightly. "Oh, Marcus Davidson and his crew." Diana's jaw tightened. "His father, Thomas Davidson, owns half this town, the country club, 3 car dealerships, sits on the school board. Marcus thinks that makes him untouchable. And unfortunately, most of the administration agrees." They stopped outside room 217. Diana touched Grace's arm gently. "Just be careful. The last teacher who crossed Marcus didn't finish the year." Grace nodded, filing the information away. "Thanks for the warning. I appreciate it." Inside her new classroom, Grace spent the morning arranging desks and hanging literary posters. She'd specifically requested the room with large windows overlooking the courtyard. Natural light always made learning easier. As she wrote her name on the whiteboard in neat script, she caught her reflection in the glass and straightened her shoulders. "You've got this," she told herself. "Just like Dad taught you, stay alert, stay calm, stay ready." Her first 3 classes went beautifully. The students were attentive, participated in discussions about To Kill a Mockingbird, and seemed genuinely excited about the creative writing unit she'd planned. It was 4th period when everything shifted. Marcus Davidson entered her classroom like he owned it, because, in his mind, he did. 6 feet 2 inches of entitled athlete, with perfectly styled dark hair and the kind of casual arrogance that came from 17 years of getting whatever he wanted. His crew flanked him: Chase Williams, all muscle and no mercy; Ryan Torres, whose cruel smirk was his default expression; and Logan Mitchell, who filmed everything on his phone for their social media accounts. They sat in the back row, legs sprawled in the aisles, making no effort to hide their disdain for being there. Grace noticed how other students automatically gave them space, some actually switching seats to avoid being near them. "Good afternoon, everyone," Grace began, her voice warm but professional. "I'm Miss Sullivan, and welcome to American literature." I know some of you might think English is boring, but I promise you, this is boring already, Marcus interrupted, not bothering to lower his voice. His crew snickered. Grace paused, meeting his eyes calmly. I'm sorry you feel that way. Perhaps you'll find our first text more engaging. We'll be starting with The Outsiders, a story about loyalty, identity, and what happens when society divides people into groups. Sounds lame, Chase muttered, loud enough for everyone to hear. But Grace noticed something else. A thin boy in the third row who flinched when Marcus's crew entered. Ethan Chen sat hunched over his notebook, sandy hair falling across his face, trying to make himself invisible. His fingers gripped his pencil so tight his knuckles were white. After class, as students filed out, Grace watched Marcus accidentally knock Ethan's books off his desk. Oops, Marcus said, his voice dripping with fake concern. Better pick those up, Chen. Ethan scrambled to collect his things while Logan filmed it, already uploading to their Instagram story with crying, laughing emojis. Grace's jaw tightened, but she kept her voice level. Marcus, a word, please. He sauntered over, his crew waiting by the door. Yeah, in my classroom. We treat everyone with respect, Grace said quietly. That includes not knocking over other students' belongings. Marcus's eyes narrowed. It was an accident, right, guys? His friends nodded, smirking. I'm sure it was, Grace replied, her tone making it clear she knew better. Let's make sure we don't have any more accidents. Have a good day, gentlemen. Marcus held her gaze for a beat too long, something dark flickering in his eyes. Sure thing, Miss Sullivan. Wouldn't want any accidents. They left, but not before Logan made a point of filming Grace, zooming in on her face with mock intimidation. She didn't react, just calmly erased the board and prepared for her next class. But inside, every instinct her father had drilled into her was firing. Threat assessment. She could hear his voice. Multiple hostiles. Pack mentality. Testing boundaries. Over the next 2 weeks, Grace established herself as a favorite among most students. Her passion for literature was infectious. Her teaching methods creative and engaging. She brought in music that connected to themes in their reading, had them act out scenes from plays, encouraged them to write about their own experiences. But Marcus's harassment of Ethan escalated daily. It started small, accidentally bumping into him in hallways, loud comments about losers whenever Ethan spoke in class, mean-spirited memes posted online. Grace documented each incident, reported them to Principal Harrison, but got the same response every time. Boys will be boys, Miss Sullivan, Harrison would say, his comb-over gleaming under fluorescent lights. Marcus is just spirited, star quarterback. You know, we need to pick our battles. A student is being systematically bullied, Grace insisted during one meeting. Isn't student safety our primary battle? Harrison's face tightened. Are you questioning my judgment in your first month here? Grace backed off, but she didn't stop watching. She noticed how Ethan's shoulders hunched more each day, how his participation dwindled, how he started eating lunch in the library instead of the cafeteria. She saw the exhaustion in his eyes, recognized it from her own childhood. The breaking point came on a Thursday afternoon. Grace had kept Ethan after class to discuss his latest essay, a powerful piece about feeling invisible. As they talked, she heard a commotion from the boys' bathroom down the hall. That particular bathroom was in a dead zone. No cameras, rarely monitored. Wait here, she told Ethan, but he grabbed her sleeve. Don't, he whispered, face pale. Please, it'll make it worse. But Grace was already moving. She pushed open the bathroom door to find Marcus holding Ethan's sketchbook over a toilet, while Chase and Ryan held the smaller boy's arms. "Look what we found," Marcus laughed. "Little Chen thinks he's an artist. Let's see if his drawings can swim." "Put it down." Grace's voice cut through the laughter like a blade. The boys froze. Teachers never came in here. This was their domain. "Miss Sullivan." Marcus recovered quickly, lowering the sketchbook, but not releasing it. This is the boys' room. You can't be in here." Grace stepped forward, her floral dress and cardigan at odds with the steel in her voice. "And you can't assault other students. Release him. Now." "We're just playing around," Ryan said, but his grip on Ethan loosened. "I said now." Something in Grace's tone made them comply. Maybe it was the way she'd positioned herself, balanced and ready. Maybe it was how her eyes never left Marcus's face. Or maybe it was the complete absence of fear in her voice. They released Ethan, who grabbed his sketchbook and fled. Marcus stepped closer to Grace, using his height advantage to loom over her. "You just made a big mistake, teacher." Grace didn't step back, didn't even blink. "The only mistake here is yours, Marcus. Touch that boy again, and you'll answer to me." "Yeah," Chase laughed. "What's a little teacher like you gonna do?" Grace smiled then, and something in that smile made Chase's laughter die. "Pray you never find out." She turned and walked out, leaving 3 confused bullies in her wake. But she knew this was far from over. She'd challenged the alpha in front of his pack. There would be consequences. That night, Grace sat in her small apartment, cell phone in hand. She almost called her father, then decided against it. He'd worried enough about her over the years. Instead, she went to her closet and pulled out a box from the back, covered in dust. Inside were photos, medals, and a worn pair of MMA gloves. She picked up a photo, her at 16, standing next to her father in his marine dress blues, both of them in fighting stances, both grinning. On the back, in his careful handwriting, "My warrior princess. Remember, we train so we never have to use it. But if we must?" Grace set the photo on her nightstand and did something she hadn't done in months. She changed into workout clothes and began running through forms in her living room. Jab, cross, hook, uppercut. Her muscle memory was perfect, movements sharp and precise. As sweat dripped down her face, she thought about Ethan's hunched shoulders, his white knuckles, his whispered, "Please." She thought about her mother, about being 10 years old and helpless, about the promise she'd made at her mother's graveside. Never again, never be helpless, never let others be helpless. The next morning, Grace arrived early to find her car tires slashed in the faculty parking lot. 4 neat cuts. Professional almost. A note tucked under her windshield wiper read simply, "Mind your business." "Oh, honey." Diana appeared beside her, coffee in hand. "I'm so sorry. This is my fault. I should have warned you they'd escalate." "It's not your fault," Grace said, taking photos for her insurance. "How long has this been going on?" "Really?" Diana glanced around nervously. "Years. Thomas Davidson owns the chief of police, has judges in his pocket. When Marcus was 12, he broke another kid's arm. It got swept under the rug. The family moved away after a generous donation from the Davidsons. And everyone just accepts it. What choice do we have?" Diana's voice was bitter. "I have 2 years until retirement. Sharon Mills challenged them last year. Suddenly, her husband's construction business lost all its city contracts. They had to move. The message is clear: Davidson owns this town." Grace pulled out her phone. Well, he doesn't own me. While waiting for AAA, Grace noticed Ethan across the parking lot, staring at her slashed tires with a stricken expression. When their eyes met, he mouthed, "I'm sorry," before hurrying inside. That day, Marcus's crew was bolder. They talked through her entire lesson, made crude jokes, openly used their phones. When Grace confiscated Logan's phone after the third warning, Marcus stood up. "Give it back," he demanded. "That's private property. You can collect it from the office after school." Grace replied calmly, locking the phone in her desk drawer. "I said give it back." Marcus slammed his palm on her desk. Several students gasped. Grace didn't flinch. "Sit down, Marcus, or leave my classroom." For a moment, the air crackled with tension. Everyone held their breath. Then Marcus smiled, cold, calculating. "Sure thing, Miss Sullivan. Wouldn't want any trouble." He sat back down, but the threat lingered like smoke. After school, Grace was grading papers when her classroom door burst open. Thomas Davidson stood there in his $1,000 suit, face red with fury. Principal Harrison hovered behind him like a nervous shadow. "You think you can humiliate my son?" Davidson's voice boomed. "Confiscate his property. Accuse him of bullying." Grace stood slowly. "Mr. Davidson, how nice to finally meet you. I've heard so much about your influence. Don't get smart with me, little girl. I own this town. One word from me and you'll never teach again." "Is that a threat?" Grace pulled out her phone, obviously recording. "Because that sounded like a threat." Davidson's eyes bulged. "You can't record without— Actually, in a school setting with administrative presence, I can. Principal Harrison, you're witnessing this." "Correct." Harrison looked like he wanted to disappear. "Now, let's all calm down." "I am calm," Grace said. "I'm calmly documenting a parent threatening a teacher for doing her job. Mr. Davidson, your son has been systematically tormenting a student. I have dates, times, witness statements." "Lies," Davidson spat. "My son says you've been harassing him, targeting him unfairly. And I believe my son over some nobody teacher who doesn't know her place." Grace smiled. "Good. Then you won't mind when I submit my documentation to the school board and the media. I'm sure they'd love a story about billionaire bullying in education." Davidson stepped closer, using his size to intimidate. "You have no idea who you're messing with." "Neither do you," Grace replied quietly. He stormed out, Harrison scurrying after him. Grace sat back down, hands shaking slightly, not from fear, but from adrenaline. She'd just declared war on the most powerful man in town. But when she thought of Ethan's face, she knew she'd do it again. That night, her father called. "Gracie, I saw something online. Some video about a teacher standing up to bullies. The kids in my dojo are all talking about it." "Wait, that's your school." "Dad, are you safe?" His voice shifted to Marine mode. "Do you need me to come up there?" "I'm okay," Grace assured him. "Just some entitled kids who need boundaries. You remember what I taught you. Every lesson," she promised. "Stay alert, stay calm, stay ready." "That's my girl." "But Grace, sometimes staying ready means knowing when the fight's coming. You feel it building." Grace looked at the photo on her nightstand. "Yeah, Dad, I feel it." "Then trust your instincts. And remember, we don't start fights, but we damn sure finish them." The next week was psychological warfare. Marcus's crew filmed her constantly, posted edited videos making her look unhinged. Someone hacked her email, sending inappropriate messages to parents. Her classroom whiteboard was vandalized with slurs. Dead flowers appeared on her desk. But Grace documented everything. She installed a hidden camera in her classroom after getting written permission from Diana as department head. She backed up all her files to the cloud. She was preparing for war like her father taught her. Intelligence first. Violence last. The other teachers began to take notice. Sharon Mills, the art teacher, slipped her a note, "Thank you for doing what I couldn't." James Rodriguez, the history teacher, started eating lunch in her classroom, a quiet show of support. Even the janitor, old Mr. Peterson, began checking on her classroom more frequently. But it was Ethan's transformation that kept her going. He started sitting straighter, participated more in class. His essays grew bolder, more honest. One afternoon, he stayed after class. "Miss Sullivan, my mom wants to meet you. She's documented everything, too. The bruises, the torn clothes. She's a nurse, so she knows how to properly record injuries." "Why didn't she report it?" Grace asked gently. Ethan's laugh was bitter. "She did. 3 times. Each time, the reports disappeared. The last time, her supervisor warned her about making waves. We need this job. My dad left, and—" "I understand," Grace said. "Tell your mom I'd be happy to meet her. Maybe together we can make something stick." That meeting happened the next evening at a small coffee shop downtown. Jennifer Chen was a tired-looking woman with kind eyes and careful documentation. She showed Grace photos going back 2 years, bruises, torn backpacks, destroyed projects. "He was such a happy kid," Jennifer whispered. "Loved school, loved art. Now he has panic attacks in the parking lot." "Not anymore," Grace said firmly. "This ends now." But ending it would require more than determination. The next day, during lunch, Grace heard a commotion from the cafeteria. She ran to find Ethan's sketchbook on fire in the middle of the floor, while Marcus's crew filmed and laughed. Ethan stood frozen, watching months of work burn without thinking. Grace grabbed the fire extinguisher and doused the flames. She scooped up the charred remains and turned to face the crowd. "Everyone filming this good. Make sure you get this part." She looked directly at Marcus. "You just committed assault, destruction of property, and arson on school grounds. That's 3 felonies. Your daddy's money won't fix this." Marcus's face went red. "Prove it was me." "Oh, I don't have to." Grace smiled. "Your friend Logan just live-streamed the whole thing, with your face clearly visible. Thank you for that." She confiscated all their phones before they could delete anything, ignoring their protests. "Principal Harrison's office, now, all of you." But Harrison, predictably, did nothing. "Boys will be boys, Miss Sullivan. A prank that went too far. They'll apologize." "Arson is not a prank," Grace said through gritted teeth. "You're overreacting. Perhaps you need to reconsider if teaching is really for you. The stress seems to be getting to you." Grace left his office knowing the system had failed completely. But systems could be changed. Sometimes it just took the right pressure at the right point. That afternoon, Marcus cornered her in the empty hallway by the old stairwell, the one with marble steps and no cameras. His crew spread out, blocking exits. "You think you're so smart," Marcus hissed. "But you're done here. My dad's calling an emergency school board meeting. By Monday. You'll be gone." "Maybe," Grace said, noting positions, distances, exits. But you'll still be a coward who picks on smaller kids. Chase laughed. Like you're so tough. You're what? 5'6", 120 pounds. 5'5", Grace corrected. 128 pounds. And more than enough to handle bullies. Prove it, Ryan challenged. I don't fight children, Grace said. Even oversized ones with daddy issues. Marcus's face contorted with rage. After school, the old stairwell. Be there, or Ethan pays the price. You think the sketchbook was bad? Wait till you see what's next. Grace's blood chilled. They were escalating to direct threats now. Leave him alone, Marcus. Your issue is with me. 3:30, Marcus repeated. Don't be late. They dispersed, leaving Grace alone in the hallway. She pulled out her phone and texted Diana. If something happens to me, check my cloud drive. Everything's documented. Password is Mama Warrior 2010. Diana appeared within minutes. What's happening? They want me at the old stairwell after school. They're threatening Ethan if I don't show. You can't go. This is insane. Call the police. With what he said. She said about an after-school meeting. You know how this works. Diana, the system protects them. Then what are you going to do? Grace thought about her mother, about being helpless, about the promise she'd made. What I have to do, just make sure someone's filming. Whatever happens, we need evidence. 3:25. Grace walked through empty hallways, her floral dress flowing around her knees, cardigan buttoned neatly. She looked like she was heading to a parent conference, not a confrontation. Her hands were steady, breathing controlled. As she approached the old stairwell, she heard voices, multiple voices, more than just Marcus's crew. She turned the corner to find not 4 boys, but 7. Marcus had brought reinforcements, older kids, graduates maybe, all wearing Westfield Heights athletic gear. And in the middle of them, held by 2 of the bigger boys, was Ethan. You came. Marcus smiled. Good. We need to discuss your resignation. Let him go, Grace said quietly. This is between us. No. See, that's where you're wrong. Marcus stepped forward. This is about respect, about knowing your place, about understanding that in this town. The Davidsons make the rules. The only rule I follow, Grace said, moving slowly into the space, noting the marble stairs behind her. The limited room to maneuver. Is protecting my students. Protecting? Logan laughed. Phone out and recording. Lady, you can't even protect yourself. That's when Grace saw Diana at the far end of the hall. Phone raised. Recording everything. Other teachers were gathering behind her. Sharon, James, even Mr. Peterson with his mop bucket. All bearing witness. Last chance, Marcus said. Resign, apologize. Leave town, or things get unfortunate. Grace looked at Ethan's terrified face, saw her mother in his eyes, felt 10 years old again. But she wasn't 10 anymore. She wasn't helpless anymore. No, she said simply. Marcus nodded to the boys holding Ethan. They shoved him hard toward the stairs. Grace moved without thinking, catching him before he could fall. But the movement put her back to Marcus. She heard Chase say, "Now!" Felt the hands on her shoulders. And suddenly, she was falling. The marble stairs rushing up to meet her. Ethan's scream echoing off the walls. And time slowed down. But Grace Sullivan wasn't falling like a victim. Her body moved with practiced precision. Years of training taking over. She tucked her chin, rolled her shoulder forward, and turned what should have been a devastating tumble into a controlled combat roll. Her dress flared as she hit the third step, using her palms to redirect momentum, dispersing the impact across her body instead of taking it all at once. She came up at the bottom of the stairs in a perfect crouch, not a hair out of place. Cardigan still buttoned. The silence was deafening. 7 teenage boys stared at their teacher, who had just performed a stunt that looked like something from an action movie. "How did you—" Chase's voice trailed off. Grace stood slowly, deliberately. Her entire demeanor had changed. The warm, nurturing teacher was gone. In her place stood someone who moved like water, balanced on the balls of her feet, eyes tracking every threat with surgical precision. When she spoke, her voice carried a different kind of authority, not the borrowed power of a teaching position, but the earned confidence of someone who had trained for war. "I asked you to let him go," she said, moving Ethan behind her with one smooth motion. "You chose violence instead. That was your second mistake." "Second?" Ryan's voice cracked slightly. "Your first was thinking I was helpless." Marcus recovered from his shock, face twisting with rage. "Get her, all of you now." The first attacker rushed forward, one of the older boys, easily 200 pounds of football muscle. He reached for Grace with both hands, expecting to grab the small woman easily. Instead, she pivoted on her left foot, guided his momentum past her with her right hand, and delivered a precise elbow strike to his solar plexus. He dropped to his knees, gasping for air that wouldn't come. "That's assault!" Logan screamed, still filming. "You can't hit students." "Self-defense," Grace corrected calmly, not even breathing hard. "Multiple attackers, clear threat, proportional response. Please keep filming. The court will need evidence." 2 more charged together, trying to coordinate. Grace dropped low, sweeping the first one's leg while using his falling body as a shield against the second. As they tangled together, she rose behind them and applied a textbook rear naked choke to the one still standing. Not enough to cause damage. Just enough to make him reconsider his choices. He tapped frantically on her arm, and she released him immediately. "Anyone else?" she asked, still maintaining her defensive stance. The remaining boys looked at each other uncertainly. 3 of their friends were on the ground in various states of distress, taken down by a woman who weighed less than any of them. But Marcus wasn't done. "She's just one person," he screamed. "Rush her together." The last 3 older boys moved in formation, spreading out to flank her. Grace smiled, actually smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. "Tactical mistake," she murmured, then moved. She feinted toward the one on the left, drawing the middle attacker forward. As he overcommitted, she spun past him, using his body to block the right attacker's approach. A quick jab to a pressure point in his shoulder made his whole arm go numb. She followed with a knee to his thigh, not the knee. She wasn't trying to cause permanent damage. That dropped him. The one on the left grabbed her cardigan from behind. Grace shrugged out of it in one fluid motion, leaving him holding empty fabric as she whirled to face him. He threw a wild haymaker that she ducked under easily, then came up inside his guard. 3 rapid strikes, solar plexus, ribs, shoulder, each targeting specific nerve clusters. He crumpled like paper. The last older boy backed away, hands raised. "I'm out. I'm done." "Smart choice," Grace said. "Sit down against the wall. Hands where I can see them." That left Marcus and his original crew. Chase and Ryan flanked their leader, while Logan kept filming. Though his hands shook so badly, the footage would be unwatchable. "You're going to jail," Marcus snarled. "My father will destroy you. You'll never work again. You'll—" "Marcus," Grace interrupted, her voice almost gentle. "Do you know what your father is doing right now?" "What?" "He's in an emergency meeting with his lawyers, trying to figure out how to distance himself from what you've done. See, while you were planning this little ambush, I filed formal reports with the State Board of Education, the Attorney General's office, and the FBI's Civil Rights Division. Systematic bullying that prevents a student from accessing education is a federal crime. Your father's smart enough to know when to cut his losses." Marcus's face went white. "You're lying." "Diana," Grace called out without taking her eyes off the boys, "could you check the news?" Diana's voice carried down the hallway, reading from her phone. "Breaking news. Prominent businessman Thomas Davidson under investigation for witness intimidation and obstruction of justice in school bullying case. Federal investigators have seized records from—" "No!" Marcus screamed and charged. This time, Grace didn't hold back. Marcus telegraphed his attack like he'd learned fighting from movies, a wide, angry swing that Grace slipped easily. She caught his wrist, used his momentum to guide him past her, and swept his back foot as he tried to recover. He hit the marble floor hard, all the air leaving his lungs in a whoosh. Before he could get up, Grace had him in an armbar, applying just enough pressure to communicate how easily she could break it. "Yield," she said quietly. "Never—" He tried to power out of it with brute strength. Grace adjusted her grip slightly. Marcus screamed. "That's your humerus pressing against your radius and ulna." Grace explained calmly, like she was teaching anatomy. "A few more pounds of pressure and all 3 bones fracture. Permanent damage. Never able to throw a football again. Yield." I yield." She released him immediately, rolling backward to her feet as sirens wailed in the distance. The entire confrontation had taken less than 3 minutes. "Everyone stay exactly where you are," Grace commanded, and something in her voice made even the thought of moving impossible. Ethan stared at her with awe. "Miss Sullivan, where did you learn?" "My father," Grace said, straightening her dress and retrieving her cardigan. "Marine Force Recon. Taught martial arts for 20 years after he retired. Said a person should train hard so they never have to use it. But if they must use it—" "Don't hold back," Ethan finished, remembering her earlier words. The police arrived to find a bizarre scene: 7 teenage boys sitting against walls, holding various injured body parts, while a small woman in a floral dress directed traffic like a kindergarten teacher organizing nap time. "She attacked us," Marcus tried when the officers appeared. "Really?" Officer Rodriguez looked skeptical. "7 of you against 1 teacher, and you're claiming she attacked you." "We have video evidence," Diana said, stepping forward with her phone. "Multiple angles showing these boys ambushing Miss Sullivan and student Ethan Chen. She defended herself and the student after being physically assaulted." More videos emerged. Sharon Mills had recorded from another angle. James Rodriguez had caught the initial push down the stairs. Even Mr. Peterson had managed to film some of it while pretending to mop. But it was Logan's own footage that damned them completely, showing the planned ambush, the threats, Marcus ordering the attack. By evening, the story had exploded across social media. Teacher defends bullied student against 7 attackers. Trending nationwide. The video of Grace's combat roll down the stairs and subsequent defense went viral within hours. MMA fighters analyzed her technique. Self-defense instructors praised her restraint. But it was the context that made it explode. Years of documented bullying. A system that protected the powerful. And one teacher who said, "Enough." Thomas Davidson's empire crumbled within days. Federal investigators found evidence of bribery, witness intimidation, and obstruction of justice going back years. Principal Harrison resigned in disgrace when emails surfaced showing he'd been paid to ignore complaints. 3 school board members stepped down. Marcus was charged with assault, conspiracy, and making terroristic threats. His college football scholarship evaporated. The other boys faced various charges, though Grace advocated for rehabilitation over punishment for the younger ones who'd been caught up in the mob mentality. At the emergency school board meeting a week later, the auditorium was packed. Parents who'd been silent for years finally spoke up about their children's experiences. Teacher after teacher testified about the culture of fear the Davidson family had created. When Grace took the microphone, the room fell silent. "I became a teacher to help students learn and grow," she said. "But I learned something these past weeks. Sometimes teaching means showing students that bullies can be stopped, that systems can change, that one person standing up can inspire others to stand with them." She looked at Ethan in the front row, sitting tall between his proud mother and a group of classmates. The real heroes here are the students who found their voices, who refused to be victims anymore, who proved that courage is contagious. The standing ovation lasted 10 minutes. 3 months later, Grace stood in the school gymnasium. But this time she wasn't alone. 30 students faced her in workout clothes, ready for their self-defense class. The school board had unanimously approved her program, making Westfield Heights the first school in the state to require self-defense training as part of physical education. "Remember," Grace told her students, "we don't train to hurt others. We train so that others can't hurt us. We train to walk with confidence, to project strength, to protect those who can't protect themselves." Ethan demonstrated a basic defensive stance. Now, her assistant instructor. He'd grown 3 inches and gained 15 pounds of muscle. But more importantly, he moved with the confidence of someone who knew he'd never be a victim again. Diana walked in with a visitor, a young woman with press credentials. "Grace, this is Sarah Martinez from CNN. She's doing a follow-up story." "Miss Sullivan," Sarah said, "your story has inspired similar programs in over 200 schools nationwide. Congress is considering the Safe Students Act based on your model. How does that feel?" Grace watched her students practicing, saw their focus and determination. "It feels like a beginning. Every child deserves to feel safe at school. Every teacher should be empowered to protect their students. Every bully should know there are consequences. And Marcus Davidson is getting help," Grace said. "Real help. His father's influence is gone, and for the first time in his life, he's facing accountability. I hope he uses this chance to become better." "You don't hate him?" Grace shook her head. "Hate is heavy. I prefer to travel light. Besides, my father taught me that the best revenge against a bully isn't destroying them. It's showing them they have no power over you anymore." After the reporter left, Grace gathered her students for cool-down stretches. As they formed a circle, she noticed a new face, a freshman girl with nervous eyes and defensive posture that screamed, "Victim!" "Welcome," Grace said warmly. "What's your name?" "Madison," the girl whispered. "Madison Turner. I heard you help kids who need help." "We help each other here," Grace corrected gently. And you're safe now. This is a bully-free zone. As the students welcomed Madison into their circle, Grace felt her father's presence. She could almost hear his voice. That's my warrior princess, fighting the good fight. On her desk in her classroom sat 3 framed photos now. The first, her and her father in fighting stances. The second, her mother, smiling and strong before the attack that took her. The third, a new one, Grace surrounded by her self-defense students, all in defensive stances, all grinning with hard-won confidence. The caption underneath, written in her father's tradition, "We train so we never have to use it. But if we must use it, we don't hold back. And sometimes, the greatest victory is teaching others to be their own heroes." Outside her window, Westfield Heights Academy buzzed with new energy. Students walked taller. Teachers engaged more freely. The shadow of fear that had darkened the halls for years had lifted, replaced by something powerful and enduring: hope. Grace Sullivan had come to Westfield Heights to teach literature. Instead, she'd taught an entire community the most important lesson of all sometimes. One person standing up to a bully can change everything, and in schools across the country. Other teachers were learning from her example. Other students were finding their voices. Other communities were discovering that bullies only have the power we give them. The revolution had begun with a push down marble stairs. It would continue with millions of students learning to stand tall, fight back when necessary, and protect each other always. Because that's what heroes do. They don't just save themselves, they teach others to be heroes too. 5 years later, Autumn Reeves stood at the podium of the United Nations Youth Summit, addressing thousands of young activists from around the world. The girl who once just wanted to cheer at football games had become a global advocate for student safety and empowerment. "Every revolution starts with one person saying no," she told the crowd, her voice carrying the same strength that had echoed through Riverside High's hallways. No to silence, no to fear, no to accepting that this is just how things are. Behind her, a massive screen displayed statistics that would have been unthinkable before her stand. Bullying incidents in American schools had dropped by 78%. The Guardian program she'd helped create now operated in 15,000 schools across 50 states. Over 3 million students had completed basic self-defense training.